Recording in progress. Okay, we are back. Day 18, Healthy for the Holidays 2022, and we are talking about radical responsibility this week. So, Monday, I introduced the concept of radical responsibility for being consistent with your word, self-integral, if you will, keeping the commitments you make to yourself. Yesterday, I introduced the topic of radical responsibility as it pertains to meaning making, meaning nothing has meaning in this world except for the meaning that we give it. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that today because you might want to understand why it pertains to your health and fitness and food journey and your body image journey. Like, what does that have to do with anything, right? And the truth is, after you get familiar and really good at tracking what meaning you are giving things, what you find is that you have a lot more agency over how you experience your life, and then ultimately what happens in your life, right? So as you continue to build the agency over how you're experiencing things, what you find is that what the circumstances start to present also starts to change, okay? So when I say nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give it, this oftentimes really trips people up because they think things like, well, there are things that are just wrong. There's no gray area about kicking a puppy or hurting a baby, right? Like those things are wrong. I didn't give it that meaning. Those things are wrong. And while there are severe emotional things like that, like hurting a child or kicking a dog or something like that, that I would say the broad spectrum of people would likely agree with, right? If we stop jumping to the most severe solutions, you can start to see where this applies to everyone and everything. For instance, we see this in politics. We just saw this in COVID, right? Where when you have somebody who is so sure that this is the only right way to think, this is the only way to believe, this is the only right answer to this issue, you have someone equally as passionate that this is the only way to think, this is the only way to believe, this is the only right answer to this issue. And both of those people, in their experience, are absolutely 100% correct. You could not change their minds if you tried. That's the polar opposites, right? But when you look at something like that, like political parties, or we saw it pretty heavily in COVID, right? There was a lot of polarization of, no, this is the right way to think about it. And this is hashtag science. And this is right. And then you saw this side saying, no, this is the right way to think about it. This is hashtag conspiracy, whatever, wherever you land on that. And coming from someone who has experienced in my own life and teaching people how to be neutral and recognize that we bring our own personal story to every feeling that we have. I have such experience with that, teaching it and living it myself, that I end up a lot of times in the gray. I can absolutely see both sides right in the middle. Now, as a human, this is part of what's made me a pretty talented therapist and conversationalist, and being able to connect with people, because I can quite literally feel and see the argument for both sides. But you cannot, but the where this is going is that when I make the statement, everything is neutral, nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give it. You might prickle a little bit and go, oh, I don't know if that's true. This certainly has meaning, right? My mom dying is bad. That has meaning. You could not change my mind. Nobody could have a different story about that. Well, I could tell you about a client that I had whose mom was really, really suffering. And it was breaking her heart to watch her suffer. And so her mom dying was genuinely a relief, was a place where she said her mom went to a better place, and she felt so much sadness for the loss of her, but also very calm and a lot of relief in that. That was her story. That was the meaning she gave it because of the experience. So a situation like someone dying does not automatically mean it means this, right? Now, why do you care about all this stuff? Why am I talking about this? Because here we are. We think that we make our decisions about food and our decisions about our bodies and our decisions about how we feel about ourselves in a vacuum. And the way that we go about trying to change who we are with food and how we feel about ourselves is to go right to the source. I'm going to eat differently. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to work out. And that's how I'm going to change my experience about my body and how I feel about myself. And I'm here to tell you that that's about 5 to 10% of the overall issue. And if you don't ever address the 90% of things that contribute to why you're not sticking to that diet, why you're talking to yourself that way in the mirror, why you want to lose weight, what happens when you do lose weight, what are the behaviors that need to get, if you don't address the 90% of things that will dictate whether or not you stick to the diet, you go to the gym and you lose the weight, if you don't address the 90%, that 10% is never going to take care of itself. And it's why I see nearly all of my clients on the hamster wheel over and over and over and over and over again until we do the 90% work. So this concept of everything is neutral, nothing has meaning unless you give it meaning, is part of that 90%. Now, why? Because think about it. If I told you today that it was going to snow all day, the meaning you give what I just told you, that neutral piece of information, changes how you feel, changes all the decisions you make, right? The meaning you give that neutral piece of information sets off a cascade of different emotions, behaviors, decisions, reactions, experience of your life. So I'm going to tell you, it's going to snow all day. Let's say the meaning you give that is, I hate the snow. I hate the snow. It makes everything cold. It's hard to drive in. It slows everything down. It's harder to get places. I hate the snow. I don't want to be cold. I don't want to shovel the snow. I hate the snow. Think about that. How would you feel with that meaning? You're frustrated. You're angry. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe you're worried. Maybe you're anxious, right? And from those emotional states, you start to make decisions about your day. It's harder to think clearly about the food that you want to eat. It's harder to make decisions about the food you want to eat because now you don't want to go to the grocery store because it's, you're going to be slipping around on the ice. So from that story that we make of the tidbit of information, it's going to snow all day. Neutral information, it's going to snow all day. The meaning you give it sets off a cascade of emotional reactions and behaviors and decisions attached to the meaning. Now, let's say I tell you it's going to snow all day. And the meaning you give that, the story you give it, the meaning you attach to it is, I love the snow. I love the snow. It's cozy. It blankets everything in white. Everyone sort of hunkers down and gets warm under a blanket. And it reminds me of the holidays. And I can't wait for it to snow. And I hope it snows us in, right? Let's say that's the meaning you give it. Well, that's going to set off a different cascade of emotions. It's going to set off a different nervous system regulated state of being. It's going to set off a different set of decisions, right? Everything that happens from the meaning you give that neutral piece of information sets off the course of your day. So if you think it doesn't matter for you to track what meaning you're giving things, here's me telling you, it matters a whole lot. When we think about the decisions we make about food all day long, the decisions we make about moving our bodies, the decisions we make about all of the habits, we did Habits Week, right? The habits that we need to form in order to get to where we want to be, it starts with meaning making. We are meaning making machines. Our brains, the neocortex part of the brain, which is the last part of the brain to develop, it's the least primitive part of our brain, was designed to make meaning of information. That is how our brains are designed. So when you get information coming into your body, your brain makes a story, it makes meaning of that information, and the story and the meaning you make of that information is the thing that dictates your decisions, the way you feel, and your behaviors throughout the day. So it is that important that we start to track and understand the meaning we make of things and how we interpret the neutral pieces of information that come into our awareness. Now, it is really important to me that you understand this. It's neutral information because that's the place we want to start from. We want to start from neutrality. It is going to snow today. That's just a fact. I can look outside. I wish it were snowing, by the way. I can look outside, can see the weather, can see it starting to snow. That is a fact. That is what's happening in my visual awareness, right? The meaning I make of that, when I attach to the neutrality, either positive or negative, or maybe it is neutral. Maybe I could care less if it snows. It doesn't change how I feel about the day. Maybe I don't care that much about the weather. The story we make about that piece of information dictates the experience of our lives. So when I'm talking about taking radical responsibility for your life, the invitation is to start tracking the meaning making, to start tracking the story that you give to things. And it's really important that you look at it from that lens. I gave it this story. If I don't like how I feel, right? Let's say I hate the snow, and then it sets off this cascade of frustration and anger and irritation and anxiety, da 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 da. I have the invitation to track it back to the story I gave about the snow. And maybe I can work on, instead of making it a negative, I hate the snow, can we move to neutrality, where the snow doesn't have that much of an impact one way or the other. We don't have to move it to, I love the snow like me, but can we move it to neutrality? And you have the invitation, we all have the invitation to take responsibility for the meaning we give to things and therefore how we react to them and experience our lives. All right, that is your tidbit for today. We will keep going with another aspect of radical responsibility tomorrow and Friday. I hope you all are enjoying these videos. We'll see you here tomorrow.